The scale of this explosion or series of explosions is enormous. The streets of the area targeted are exceptionally densely populated. The level of destruction will be vast. According to the Lebanese health minister, so far there are already 2 dead and 76 injured, but those are numbers which are surely going to rise significantly because an entire block has been leveled. At least 6 buildings, we believe, have collapsed, all of which was accompanied by a huge sonic boom by the Israeli fighter jets that shot those missiles, which shook the ground beneath us. This is the 5th time this week that this particular area, it's called Dahaya, it's a Hezbollah stronghold in the south of the city. It's the 5th time that that area has been shot, but this is like nothing we've experienced this week. Israel say that it was a targeted strike, that they were going after a senior commander from Hezbollah. Israeli media say that it was Hassan Nasrallah. Now, Iranian state media have said that it wasn't, but we have not heard from Hezbollah yet. There is no confirmation. Either way, this is a significant escalation in this conflict, a conflict which has already claimed almost 800 lives since the beginning of this week, a figure which in the next 24 hours may rise significantly. A colossal series of explosions that shook the city. Around 6 p.m. on a Friday night, a major strike on a building block in the Hezbollah stronghold of Dahaya, South Beirut. Footage moments after the strike capture the sheer size of the blast and the shock of all who felt it. Black plumes of smoke billow into the evening sky, an eruption that could be seen for miles around. The Israeli military said it was a precision attack on Hezbollah's central headquarters.
Hezbollah's central headquarters was intentionally built under residential buildings in the heart of the Dahia in Beirut, as part of Hezbollah's strategy of using Lebanese people as human shields.
In his speech at the UN shortly before the bombs dropped, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned of further action against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Pictures capture him making the phone call authorizing the attack. Around the blast site, total chaos. The air thick with ash as ambulances and emergency workers race to the scene. This is a built-up, densely populated area, and there are grave fears for civilians in apartments on top of and around Israel's apparent target. Soldiers, medics, and civilians are now sifting through the rubble for survivors. But the mood here all week has been tense. That has been ratcheted up to untold levels this evening. All week, the talk has been about of a possible ground invasion by Israel. So the chat now as well, could this be a precursor hitting Hezbollah's command and control structure? There are other questions being raised already, such as international law. Under international law, it states the principle of proportionality states that even if there is a clear military target, it is not possible to attack if the expected harm to civilians or civilian property is excessive in relation to the expected military advantage. Those are questions for the future. For right now, this is just a chaotic scene and people are just looking for survivors and to do all that they can.
Paul McNamara in Beirut. Well, the blasts there began shortly after Israel's Prime Minister wrapped up his speech at the United Nations General Assembly. Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that Israel's campaign against Hezbollah would continue, declaring, "We are winning." But there weren't many delegations left in the UN chamber to hear it after a number of countries walked out in protest. Trying to steal his thunder, protesters who see Benjamin Netanyahu as an accused war criminal. Also protesting, Israelis who think he's got it all wrong, like Yehuda Cohen, father of 19-year-old Nimrod, who was taken hostage on October 7th.
The Israeli government is not just doing nothing. for the good of Israel. They are doing all they can to destroy Israel.
Order, please.
As the Israeli Prime Minister walked in to address the General Assembly, many UN delegations walked out. But Mr. Netanyahu had brought a band of hostage families who support him to cheer him on.
We will not rest until the remaining hostages are brought home too. And some of their family members are here with us today.
Netanyahu railed against Iran and every group it supports, from Hamas and the Houthis to Hezbollah.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East. Enough is enough. We won't rest until our citizens can return safely to their homes. We will not accept a terror army perched on our northern border, able to perpetrate another October 7th-style massacre.
Near that northern border in Haifa today, people woke up to a barrage of Hezbollah rockets, arriving within a few seconds of the air raid siren and shot down by the Iron Dome defense system. Among those taking shelter here, people like Anat Yoloz, ordered to evacuate from their homes in border towns, only for the war to follow them.
We knew that it's going to come to Haifa, because we knew that the Hezbollah won't stop. No ceasefire, we don't want ceasefire. We know what we're against, what we're dealing with. And we know that our government, our army, has to do something to bring us home back.
So you don't want a ceasefire anymore?
No, we don't want.
Frustration among the displaced grows every day. Trapped in a hotel away from home and work, their lives on hold.
This is the shelter, and this is where the bomb.
And it landed just here?
Yeah.
Also here, 16-year-old Linoy, injured this week in Kiryat Bialik when a rocket landed outside her home.
The explosion kind of exploded on my face, and from the glasses going everywhere, my face got a...
You got hit?
Yeah. Turned into a black eye, but there was a lot of bleeding there.
How did you feel this morning when the siren went off?
Yeah, it kind of scared, yeah. We went like straight to the shelter, we ran.
These are the sorts of images Israel's military releases for domestic media consumption. Airstrikes on Lebanese targets and well-armed troops preparing for a possible invasion of southern Lebanon. But last night, Hezbollah's Iranian-backed Houthi allies in Yemen fired a missile at Tel Aviv. It was destroyed before it got anywhere near, but Israelis everywhere now know that as their war aims escalate, so do the dangers to them. Well, in the last few minutes, Iran's embassy in Beirut has described this as a dangerous escalation. We can now speak to discuss all of this a former head of Israeli military intelligence, Amos Yadlin. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I know you were watching this speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu in New York. How do you think it has served the Israeli nation?
I think it's laid forward the Israeli case to everybody. It reminds them the 7th of October massacre, the aggression by Hamas and Hezbollah. And with all due respect to the speech, I think the event of the evening is now happened maybe 2 hours ago in Beirut, where Israeli airplane attacked and destroyed the main command post of the terror organization, Hezbollah. And we are all looking to see the result, whether Hassan Nasrallah, the head of the terror organization, survived the attack or joined most of his leadership that already targeted by Israel in the last 2 weeks.
Now, you have spoken about a strategic disconnect between what the Prime Minister has been saying and what Israel needs for the future. What do you mean by that?
I think Israel first has to make sure that the 101 hostages held in Gaza will be brought back home. This is a moral decision, a moral compass for the Prime Minister. And I do hope that if there is a success today in Beirut against Hezbollah, he will again look to the south and will do a deal to bring back the hostages. Because Israel, in a way, restored its deterrence in the last couple of months. From Ania death, all the leadership of Hezbollah, 50% of their rockets and missiles that were in innocent people's homes. And basically, if Nasrallah is also targeted, it's time for Israel to reach a deal in the south, which will end the war in the south, end the war in the north, as Nasrallah, if he's still alive, said that he will end the war if Gaza is over. And then what Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke so much about this evening, the normalization with the Saudis can go forward, and then together the US, the Sunni Arabs, and Israel will cope with the axis of evil that all directed from Tehran.
Well, that's very interesting that you're saying that a negotiated peace is still possible without a ground war in Lebanon. But what you're saying about the Saudis, which was in Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech where he said he wanted to restore that connection and to try and build a peace with Saudi Arabia, has already been rejected by the Saudis unless Israel is prepared to recognize a Palestinian state. Now, are you saying that that is possible as a precursor to normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia?
I think Palestinian state is not a possibility at that moment. You will not give Hamas a price for their massacre, for their beheading of babies, burning people alive, and what they have done on the 7th of October. It is not a possibility. However, it is a goal for the long run. When the Palestinians
But in that case, there is no normalization, is there?
I think the Saudis know very well that a Palestinian state today cannot be done. I think the two leaders can agree on a vision in the future based on different performance, not supporting terrorists, having another education, not for terror, but for peace. And I think that the bar for an agreement between Israel and Saudi will be lowered in case of the war, end of the war in Gaza, and the fact that the Saudis saw basically that Israel intelligence, Israel Air Force is very effective and can help them against the aggression from the Houthis or from Iran.
Amos Shadlin, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight. Well, we can now speak to Yehuda Cohen, who you saw in my report earlier protesting against Benjamin Netanyahu in New York. His son Nimrod is an IDF soldier captured in the October 7th attacks, who has been held hostage in Gaza for almost a year. Yehuda joins me now live from New York. Thank you for talking to us again. What did you make of the speech, and do you still think Prime Minister Netanyahu is wrong?
Well, let's summarize it in 2 sentences and then I'll elaborate. First thing, what he said was a pack of lies all along. Second thing, the times he mentioned hostage deal was 0. He didn't talk about the hostage deal. So he started saying that everybody is lying and I'll tell you the truth. And then he started his lies. He said we want peace, and he talked about war. He talked about normalization with Saudi Arabia, and we know that we could have had it a year ago, but the continuing war with no direction, no reason, is delaying that. More than that, Saudi Arabia says normalization with Israel will come only after Palestine negotiation for a Palestine state. So actually what he said, we have to fight, we have to fight, and we have to fight, and then we'll have to fight. What he's actually doing is fighting only to survive as a prime minister. He said, we don't want to rebuild a settlement in Gaza. That's another lie. Because his partners in the coalition, the extreme ones, Smotrich and Ben Gvir, all they want is to rebuild a settlement in Gaza. And this is the reason actually, as we know, the last area that was conquered was the Philadelphia corridor, what's called now. And it was done 7 months after the 7th of October. And the reason was because he hoped, that his coalition partners hoped and tried to run down the Gazian civilians all the way down to Egypt so they can clean up the Gaza Strip and rebuild settlements. That's the main target. So in short, what he said was, we want peace, so that's why we're fighting. Sounds a bit... doesn't make any sense anyway. And
Mr. Cohen, I must apologise to viewers because there's a long delay on this line.
He said, we are doing everything.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to carry on because I just want to ask you, you know, some of the hostage families were with Netanyahu today, cheering him on in the chamber. And then there are people like you who are saying he's totally wrong. If you were put in charge of bringing home your son and the others alive, what would you do? Could you just lay it out for us in simple terms?
Yeah, go for a deal. Go for a deal along with a ceasefire. That's what Hamas wanted from the beginning. That's what he's demanding now. And this is the only way to solve this issue. Only a ceasefire will promote a deal that will bring all the hostages. Now, Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire because he wants to stay in power, and the only way for him to stay in power, keeping his friends in the coalition, is keeping on the war. Anyway, during a war, it's the most convenient time to do whatever you like breaking down the judgmental system in Israel and breaking down or trying to break down protests or everything else. Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire. Netanyahu is for destruction of the region, for destruction of Israel. He is only there to rule as a prime minister, no matter what will happen. And he doesn't want a deal. He didn't mention it. The hostages will return somehow. Yeah, the Hamas will give up. Yeah, they will give up. Because I don't know how. They won't give up. So there won't be a hostage release. Currently we know hostages are being murdered because of the IDF keeps on maneuvering in the Gaza Strip. And maybe he wants, once it was said, to lower the prices. Yeah, getting them back in body bags will bring them back in a lower price. I want my son alive. I sent my son to the army.
Yehuda Cohen, thank you very much indeed.
My son was there
for
to
joining
protect
us.
the border
I'm sorry
Gaza.
about the delay in our communications, but and thank you very much indeed for joining us.